The hunted is here, but the question is chaos really a talent? I'd like to think so. Fresh and Buds now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds. And yes, you guessed it, it is the lore episode for the hunted. Kale from DeadSummerArt is back. How you doing, my friend? What is going on?
Yeah, it's been hectic. The end of the year, Christmas, everything going on with that. New set coming out. People are losing their minds over cards, whether it's the effect or the artwork. New lore, great lore. Yeah, a ton of reveals. Chaos, Arachnes. Oops, all Arachnes. It's going wild over here. So I'm keen to jump into it and to get your opinions too on all of the lore, because I haven't discussed it with pretty much anyone else yet. So.
Well, this will be a fun one. It's always a fun one, to be honest. Yeah, it's a wild set. I'm excited to kind of dig into it. This is probably, funny enough, truly, other than Dusk Till Dawn, I think the most lore focused set that we've gotten since, I think, Dynasty, because Dynasty was like the prequel to this, right?
Yeah.
And this, like, the whole idea of this set is a piece of lore, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna really dig into it. I'm excited, but before that, got to give a congratulations to you, my friend, because you hit 5 years of doing Flesh and Blood content. That's so cool. How's it feel? That's a long time to be doing content for one game.
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like 5 years. Like, I was thinking about my channel and what I wanted to do for this year. And then when I was thinking, 2025, what am I going to be doing? And I was like, wait, when did I start my channel? 2020. Oh boy. So, it's flown by way faster than I thought. And it's given me a chance to stop and reflect on the things I enjoyed over the past 5 years, and like where the channel is now and what I want to do in the future. And there are some good things and some bad things, and I'm really determined this year to like put 110% into the channel and really push it as far as I can go to really see like what can be done, because I've been taking it somewhat casually for these 5 years, taking it seriously and spending a lot of time where I felt was relevant, but I didn't really dive into it as if it were a quote unquote full-time job. You see other content creators like Red Zone Rogue or DM Armada just putting in work, right? Always pumping out content, and I'm down to give that a shot where possible. Obviously, I have like a job, but
yeah.
But I'm down to be like, all right, a lot of my free time, let's focus on this. So, yeah.
Well, obviously I've known you for just about almost 3 years of those 5, right? I think I started in 2021, I think.
Tales of Aria,
that must have been 2021, right? I think. I don't remember.
yes,
pretty sure
it was. Yep.
I just did 3 years of the pod. Wait, we could do the math. This is episode 180. Yes, so I've definitely done 3 years. I'm losing my mind, folks. But I've seen how your content has grown, and I like to kind of brag about the fact that I get you on this podcast like once a set just to talk about lore. But even in the past year, I just remember looking back at the last January set, which was Heavy Hitters. Now, I loved Heavy Hitters. We were talking about it before we started recording. I love Heavy Hitters from a gameplay aspect. But when we talked in January last year, it was a pretty... We basically had to make up lore. If you look back, We made up like a whole story about Rhinar like uniting the Savage Lands, and it sounded pretty cool in LSS. Listen, take it; it's all yours. But it was a lore baron set, right? So I remember, I don't want to speak out of turn, but talking to you, it felt like that could be a little bit disappointing, right? That's like what your focus is in the game, and understandably they were going through some changes at LSS, but this past year you pumped out a lot of like YouTube shorts, like just like really great informative tidbits, and then even like the starter guide, which we talked about last time we chatted, I think.
Yeah, we must have, I think.
And that is really impressive to just kind of like take that negative and turn it into a driving force, and I think your content really like took a jump up this year. So if the next year is going to be crazy, I'm excited to see what it's going to be like.
Yeah, that's the plan. I've had just like a lot of ideas on the back burner for a while. I've had videos that I've just been slowly chipping away at for however long, and now I'm like, all right, no more excuses. Last year I really felt like I was just making excuses as to like, I'm tired from work, I don't want to do this, or I just want to focus on making this really good video, and then just sort of being like, no, I've got to, if I want this to be good, if I want my channel to succeed, if I want to spread the awesome lore that is Flesh and Blood, I got to put in the work. You got to put in the reps. No pain, no game, as they say. And I did that. Not as much as I wanted to, but I did a lot more. With the shorts and whatnot. So there's a lot to look back on from 2024 that I'm proud of, but 2025 is the new focus and bigger and better. So
it's upwards and onwards. And listen, if you need any more voiceover work, just
I always do.
That's actually my favorite stuff to do. You're like, I get to like be a different person for a minute. That's amazing. I'm stuck in this head all day. But I did want to ask, in the past 5 years, which is kind of crazy to think about, 5 years, that is more than like your high school years and stuff, and college.
Yeah.
What have been some of your favorite moments?
I think spoiler seasons, not so much in the past year, just simply because I haven't been a part of it, which does kind of, drain a little bit of my passion for spoiler season if I'm not directly involved, but it's still fun. But like when the community was smaller, it was so fun to like jump into the Purple Discord and just speculate on cards that are coming out and new mechanics. With my spoiler cards, I would always, when I was allowed to, I would always tease little tidbits of my card. I'd do little lore trivia quizzes in the the channels and whatnot, and then every time someone got an answer right, I would show them a bit more of my card. And everyone's losing their mind. Like, for example, Morlock Hill. When I showed them a part of the card, I just showed them the word Minerva Themis, and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "That is not flavor text." And they're like, "What?" So just moments like that when the community is really tight knit and just all excited for something. The hype train is fun to jump on, grab a ticket. But I mean, just in general, the sets have been awesome for Flesh and Blood over the years. They constantly evolve on what you think is possible for the game. Like, I didn't even think of the idea of like meld cards because that's something that I'd seen in Magic, but then you just never think about, maybe this is something they could do in Flesh and Blood too. Double-sided cards with like the dragons, or like the chi, crazy stuff like that. I guess just joining in on the excitement is always my favorite part of the past few years, and also seeing, I guess, another thing is seeing pro players take heroes and decks that you don't expect to the top tables and win a tournament. Like Defensive Briar. I forgot who played that. You might
Charles
remember.
Dunn.
Charles Dunn. Yeah, I was thinking that name in my head. Or like Shoma at was it Pro Tour
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam?
Yeah.
With Zuri. Like that was wild. I watched that match and I watched a lot of the top games and just seeing some of the play patterns. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. You know, everyone in the chats just, you know, chats chat, but you know, a lot of the time they are just hyped as well, losing their mind. You know, so seeing a lot of the pro stuff is also really cool whenever I get to catch that and catching keynotes as well. And you know, staying up late or waking up early whenever it is to catch the latest reveals is really sick. So yeah, that'd be my favorite moments.
Yeah, it is really, you know, really cool. The excitement, I mean, we're in the kind of the, not the tail end of the excitement, where people are pretty excited. We got pre-release coming this weekend, and the world premiere just happened over in Prague, and you know, from what I saw, people were loving the set, and just kind of seeing that excitement, you know, come full circle is really, really cool, right? And yeah, I mean, seeing certain heroes ascend has been like kind of really cool to like even bring it back to like the lore of the game. Like Azuri was like the perfect rogue deck, right? Like if you think about it, like that is so cool. Like it was like honestly the worst meta ever. It was like Zen and new, and you're just like, what is, like, you know, Art of War was still legal and stuff like that. And then, you know, you just see this deck masterfully like piloted by Shoma, and you're just like, oh, this feels like Azuri. That's like why this game is so great, and probably why it has such legs too. You know, and it's very cool. Now, I do got to ask, you know, you've covered a lot of lore over the years, and you know, we're getting a little bit more every set. We could always use more. More than the amount that we get, but we can always use more. But you've covered a decent amount. Which bits over the past 5 years of lore have been your favorite to cover?
Gotta obviously say Viscera has been one of my favorites. Mostly because, like, out of all the heroes in the story, he's had the most development. He's had the most story, like, really written about him. At least off the top of my head that I can think of. So to just see where he's gone with that story and the characters that have kind of tied into it as well with the War of the Monarchs, that's been really cool. Obviously Rosetta was kind of a breath of fresh air after like a big lack of lore for some time. Like Part of the Mistveil obviously had some, but it wasn't that much, you know, in comparison to what we had received previously. But Rosetta was like a nice juicy steak after not eating food for an entire day, you know?
Yeah.
So, and obviously I love Florian, and I really loved a lot of the character development there. And even just reading some of the Hunted lore, just a lot of subtle hints that they drop and just bits and pieces that you pick up on. And like, for example, we'll go into it a bit later, but there was like a character that was mentioned in some of the new lore, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's a character from Kano's lore. So there's like lots of tiebacks and stuff, and I'm like, what's going on here and whatnot. And also, I just thought of it. Got to shout out Outsiders lore. Some of the best written stories that we got. It's so badass. Like,
I think about that
Azuri
Riptide story still. I mean, not surprisingly, but
yeah,
was so
you know,
cool.
Riptide being a badass, and then the origins of Arachne, and then learning that Arachne killing the Emperor was a mistake, wasn't meant to happen, and you know, all this extra stuff. So it was really cool seeing Outsiders lore. But I'd say they're probably some of my favorites. I love the overarching stories that are, you know, worked upon through future set releases, and a lot of throwbacks. I love throwbacks to stuff that we've learnt ages ago, like, you know, this character that was in the Kano story appearing to an extent in the new lore. So yeah, that'd be my favorite, I'd say.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny too. Like you mentioned Viscera, right? It's been kind of, I mean, Viscera has a great fully fleshed out story right now, but like it's not like, I guess not fully fleshed out, but a pretty fleshed out like story compared to the other heroes, right?
Mm.
And a lot of this lore is sometimes hamstrung by the Living Legend system, right? Because we kind of have to wait until
Yep.
it hit Living Legend to like get a reprint. In a lot of ways, I know that, and I know Gary is out there listening, is very upset about Blitz Viscera not being legal. I'm sure it's coming, my friend.
Yep.
But adult Viscera is on the door, right? Like at the like the long like light at the end of the tunnel, right? In the Living Legend system. And
Oh, it's been a long road.
it's been a long road, and finally like Rosetta gave Viscera some really awesome juice. So I would be shocked if Viscera doesn't hit LL in the next couple months, you know, with the RTN season and even maybe a couple of big tournament wins. And then all of a sudden people are like, well, now we're due for the reprint, or at least the functional reprint. And you know, it stinks that we just went to Volcor like now, because we know that like Viscera's like the return of Viscera to Volcor would be a really cool, you know, tidbit. But maybe part 3 of War of the Monarchs is where we see some more juicy Viscera. Well, you know, you and Gary will be eating good. So
Oh yeah. I hope so.
yeah, so yeah, it's all exciting, but I just wanted to congratulate you. I think 5 years is awesome. Any milestone's great, and you know, I'm glad you're still doing it. I'm glad you're still crazy enough to come on this podcast and chat with me. So you know, it's awesome. But we do gotta talk about some Flesh and Blood cards, because last time we talked about your Mysteria or MST. I keep wanting to say Mysteria. I know it's part of the Mistveil. I keep just calling it Mysteria because that's the land it was in.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, hey, it's Mysteria. And I also don't want to give too much respect to that set because I hate it with all my... I loved it in draft. But those heroes, well, not new. I don't have any problems with new. But Enigma, oh my God. Anyway, Rosetta. You mentioned that Rosetta was a juicy one for you. And you know, when you were on last time, like it seemed like a certain hero was made for you, and I'm going to be surprised if this fresh fave is not that hero. Kale, who was your favorite hero from Rosetta?
Florian, for sure. Actually, I mean, for those that are watching on YouTube, you could probably see in the background. I'll grab it. This is actually, I haven't worked on it for a little bit, just because, you know, Christmas and whatnot, but this is actually the beginning of my Florian cosplay. This is the chest piece.
Ooh.
This took a long time to try and figure out how to get measurements correct. But
a little
yeah,
sneak peek.
a little sneak peek. You know, I've always been pretty crafty and whatnot. You know, I paint miniatures as one of my hobbies and whatnot. So that's kind of within the same realm. And yeah, that took a bit of effort to try and learn, but the Fab cosplay community is awesome for helping me out on that. So yeah, Florian through and through. I mean, even just like in the game, I've played a ton of him on Talishar. I'm currently playing him in the League That Means Nothing 3. I actually have a match in 7 hours from now.
Okay, I was about to say.
So I'm gonna have to.
We'll have to wrap up soon.
Yeah. But yeah, I have to wake up early for that one because I'll be versing Carlos from I'm gonna butcher this name, Fabatorium. I believe that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I think so. Close enough.
I'll be versing him. He's going to be on Rhinar, so that will be an interesting matchup. I haven't versed Rhinar in a while.
Yeah, no, right?
But yeah, like the play pattern of Florian, I used to just kind of be an aggro, like, you know, wow, big numbers kind of Viscero player with my cash in Viscero. But since swapping to Florian, and it's really challenged me to think out like my next turn and blocking, instead of just being like, oh, no significant on hits. Yeah, I'll just take the damage and throw it back at you, you know. I'm actually thinking like, oh, I could have a good turn next turn, but I want to fill up my graveyard so I can start decomposing. So oftentimes I'll just block raw damage just to get stuff in my graveyard and start decomposing. So the play pattern is very interesting, and it's so satisfying when you get to end game and you slap down like a big Germinate and you make like, 8 rune chants and 4 embodiments of earth or something, and now all your non-attacks block for like 8 or something, which is crazy. So yeah, Florian, the way to go.
Florian is very, very cool, and I'm with you. Like it's hard to even go back to like the aggro life after you start doing the grindy stuff, because you're like, you get back to the aggro life and you're just like, well, I want to block now. You're just like, I'm so used to blocking and how satisfying it is. So like, enjoy the grindy side. I think the grindy side's sick. Now, we didn't have a lot of weapons in Rosetta, but what was your favorite?
I think I just got to choose Rotwood Reaper, even though I don't use it. I mean, it's Florian's weapon. It looks really cool. I'm going to be obviously having to make one IRL, which will be sick. And just the other day, I guess another treat for the YouTube watchers, I picked up a cold foil.
Ooh, very nice.
For my collection. It was pretty cheap, obviously, because no one's playing it. But it's his signature weapon. I gotta have it in the collection, and I've been trying to collect all cold foil Runeblade weapons and equipment. There's still a little bit that I got to get, like some of the newer stuff. And like the cold foil Crown of Dichotomy from Arcane Rising, but that's going to cost me an arm and a leg. So, but everything else I've got cold foil. I've got pretty much all the weapons now. I think every weapon. I don't have Starfall.
Ooh, that's a good one though. That is
that's
both
in
the
terms
lightning
of
ones were
power. Yeah, in terms of power, I'd probably say Starfall. But the lightning wizard Volcor, the lightning rod, is actually really sick too. I think all the weapons were pretty cool. Some were just more playable than others, but I guess in terms of vibes, Rotwood Reaper is definitely my favorite. So
yeah, I mean, I know that like some of the more like competitive or like aggro minded players out there will cringe when I say this, but I long for a day when Rotwood Reaper is playable, because that would be such a grind. It has to be a really grindy meta. That's like Romping Club to me, right? You're just like, we're just doing that. That's
Value Town.
Now, what was your favorite equipment? We did have a lot of really cool equipment in this set.
It's not going to be Runeblade, but it is something I use with Florian, and that's going to be Bark Skin of the Millennium Tree.
Oh yeah,
that card is so unbelievably good. I've had so much joy and pleasure just completely shutting down my opponent's turn, because I block. I kind of keep my life total somewhat high, and then by the time I get to 8, maybe I'm down to like 20, like 8 cards in my banish zone, and then they go to swing in for a turn. And I just go, nah, and I just chuck in the Bark Skin. I get 2 embodiments of earth, and then they're like, well, if I keep going, he's just gonna, slap down like a 3-block non-attack and block for 5. Yeah. So, I might as well just end my turn here. And I'm like, thanks. Now I get a good turn, and I start chucking out a bunch of rune chants and stuff. So that card's so good.
It is. What weapon are you using in Florian?
I go between Dread Scythe and Reaping Blade. Cool. I mean, people that have seen me post online know I had a really big gripe with Count Your Blessings. Because I had one particular match online where I was versing a Bravo, and I didn't know what he was going to be doing. And I was like, well, I would like to gain life, so I'm not going to run Reaping Blade. I'll run Dread Scythe. And then little did I know that this was a Count Your Blessings Bravo, and I pretty much lost just entering the game with a Dread Scythe instead of a Reaping Blade.
Yeah.
And that just felt really bad. But I mean, I'm just glad I get to swing Dread Scythe. I have a cold foil because I bought it when it was like $10, and I mean, the price of it, like, quadrupled, quintupled when Rosetta came out. So yeah, I switch between depending on the matchup, but I tend to stick with the Dread Scythe.
Dread Scythe is, I mean, when I saw Channel Millennium Tree, I was like, Dread Scythe, come on. I mean, I know that it's kind of still similar to like activating Grasp and then attacking with the Reaping Blade, but the Dread Scythe's cooler, so let's just do that, you know?
Yeah, they need cards that buff specifically Scythes. I've been waiting for it for a while now. I think back in the day, I may have even talked about the idea of like an attack reaction that buffs Scythes and called it Cleave, but now we have a card called Cleave that buffs axes instead.
It would have to be like Reap or something like that, you know? Just
yeah.
Oh man, that would be cool. Like, yeah, I agree. Scythes need a buff, like, or like an attack reaction, and then I think flails do as well. You know, Hexagore and I'm blanking on Vincettes, but you know,
Flail of Agony.
Yeah, Flail of Agony. So get some flail stuff going. Cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking now because like, you know, Razor Reflex that gives you go again on hit, for like your attacks. Pummel gives you discard. Maybe like the Scythe one could like mill a card off the top of the opponent's deck or something. Like you're cutting into their resources. That'd be pretty cool. But
yeah, I mean, even
throwing it out there, LSS, you can take it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're still on the topic, I think like thematically, right? If I were to say what would the Scythe do, well, you know, I think of the Grim Reaper. It kills things, but so do most weapons. Like maybe just some really cool ally interaction, right? Like when this hits a hero, kill an ally that they. I guess that's what Cleave does anyway. So
it kind of does.
But anyway, I digress. What was your favorite card in the set? The card that you throw into your deck?
So there's quite a few that are good that I run in the deck. Like if you're playing Florian, you pretty much have to run 3 Felling of the Crown, 3 Plow Under. I don't know if I can choose between these 2 cards because they're just so good. So I might take a little cheat answer here and say 2 of them. I'm going to say Arcane Seed's Life. That is bonkers good, especially once you turn Florian's hero ability on. It's like a 5-point swing in life, essentially, from one card. Plus, it also helps trigger anything that you've got that might require you to play a non-attack. So if you're running like Nebula Blade, you just play like Arcane Seed's Life beforehand, and now your Nebula Blade's online. And Rootbound Carapace. Is that what it's called? Rootbound Carapace, the defense reaction?
Yep.
Yeah. That card is so pivotal for decomposing and just being defensive. Like I think no matter what sort of build you're doing for Florian, you're probably chucking in some Rootbound Carapaces, even if you're not grindy, just because being able to suddenly decompose on your opponent's turn is like sometimes enough to throw them off their game because they don't expect you to have a certain amount of cards in your banish zone at the start of your turn. You know, you might have, say, 5 or 6 cards, and then they're like, okay, well, if they're going to decompose and hit their threshold, they're going to have to do something on their turn, and then you play Rootbound Carapace, and suddenly, at the start of your turn, you've got Florian active, and you can start using Grasp and stuff, so those 2 cards are great. Plus, I've got Arcane Seed's Life in Cold Foil, which is really nice.
Yeah. I'm excited for the gem packs, but I was pretty happy that the armory, you know, they kind of moved away from the cold foil weapons and moved into something that was like, you needed 3 of, right? So they automatically made it a little bit more enticing to win because you're like, I got one of the 3 rather than I just got the one that I need. But
yeah, for sure.
You know, yeah, Arcane, like a lot of the meld cards are very cool. Arcane Seeds was definitely one of like the more just like raw power ones, right? Where you just like cost to like what it does. I think it has to be the best. I mean, I'm a Comet Storm fan, but like that's a lot of resources. So
yeah. I mean, Arcane Seeds is just an auto include. I don't think you make any Florian list. Like you could probably argue Rootbound Carapace. Some deck lists might not want it, but Arcane Seeds Life.
Oh yeah.
If you're not putting it in your deck, you're doing it wrong. That's the first 3 cards you put in your deck. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we've asked you what class and talent would you be. Are there any updates there?
No, I think I'd still be a elemental adjudicator,
That makes sense. That makes
which would
sense.
be really cool. Yeah.
And this is a new question we've been asking. What is, as it stands, what is your greatest set of all time?
Oh,
Because we're 5 years into this game and we have a lot of
yeah.
sets and some really great ones.
I'm trying to think. So I've been there for all of them. What
Mhm.
was the most impactful? I I might be biased because I bought a case of this set and I got like bonkers pulls. I'm gonna say Crucible of War, just
Listen,
because. I mean, yeah, you go, you go.
no. I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if anybody said Crucible yet, but Crucible was like, I think people don't like, especially like, I guess what we'll call them, flesh and blood Zoomers. You don't understand. You weren't there. Like, even I was after Crucible War, and people were like, Remorseless is $80 or something like that, and you're like, holy smokes, what's going on in this set? But yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, just because like the first two sets before it, we got the foundations of what the game would be, what the 8 main classes would be. And then from that point on, we're like, where can they go from here? And then Crucible of War, they've really focused on like new weapons and new armor pieces for all the classes. So now all of a sudden, decks that were pretty one-dimensional in what direction you would go in deck building, now suddenly you've got different ways to build it. Like, for example, Redliner, the bow for Ranger. Like, all of a sudden now you can make a Redliner deck where everything's low to the ground, low cost, just like super aggro, spit out a bunch of arrows. We got Reaping Blade for Runeblade, so now we had like a more aggressive weapon. What
Mandible
else did we have?
Claw.
That was Mandible Claw,
Oh, like,
incredible
arguably,
weapon for Brute.
yeah, like that shaped that class.
Yeah, that might be probably the strongest weapon I think that we got out of Crucible off the top of my head. I'm trying to think what else we got. I mean, we got the sabers for Warrior. We got a bunch of new heroes in the set too, like Kasai and Benji, and we got
KO. Bad
KO. We got
KO.
Shapeshifter as a class as well. It was just like a smash hit set. Like pretty much any of the Majestics from that set, I feel like if you open them, you're pretty happy to get. And yeah, I got bonkers pulls from my case. I got a Cold Foil Arknight Shard, which I've still got to this day. I'm never getting rid of it. Cold Foil Shiana, which I ended up selling. I got a Full Art Twinning Blade, which I sold. I got a Rainbow Foil Gorganian Tome, which was short printed.
Oh yeah.
Which I've still got. So out of like the 5 top cards from the set, Spring Tunic was the 5th. I got 4 of them, so I was over the moon. Morvarin Skies for Runeblade. Oh, so many good cards.
I should say, I think Mr. Viz also said Crucible War.
I think he did.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember when he was on the show.
Shard. I try to forget about it because he's got just too much good luck. Sorry, Gary. But no, that's a great answer. I think Crucible War, like, it's so weird it will be weird to look back and be like, yeah, we had a couple supplemental sets at one point. And, I know we're going to get like the Mastery set for Guardian this year, which is essentially a focused supplemental set. But like we had like, that was like a release and Everfest had like a lot of powerful stuff, and Dynasty set the stage for some really cool stuff, but Crucible is really going to go down as at least the greatest supplemental set. And if not,
For sure.
it's going to be one of the more influential. I mean, like even just thinking about both Centauri Sabers and Mandible Claws, like, well, you just got to play those like in X amount of heroes all the time, which is like really cool. And when KO rotates, Brute's in trouble. But
I mean, we did get a few stinkers from the set. I mean, the Conduit, pay 2, deal 2 arcane. It's pretty bad, but you gotta take the bad with the good sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But no, great answer. But it is time to talk about the lore in the Hunted, which is pretty wild, right? So let's set the stage. We know in Dynasty, Arachne killed the Emperor, right? Arachne, an assassin, assassinated the Emperor. Classic assassin move, I would say. And and
somewhat controversial. This one.
somewhat controversial. Like people are saying, oh well, the Emperor, had a family, but also maybe was a little bit of a tyrant. We don't know. Like, listen, we can't really speculate too much, but Arachne does that. That was the introduction to Arachne and the assassin class. And honestly, like, I know we've had quite a few assassins since. Arachne, in my mind, is still the coolest, right? A lot of mystery to Arachne, and there is something about them that is just so kind of like it's the mask and like the overall demeanor and just the actual kind of grindiness, like the grindy disruption that Arachne has, and it kind of captured the hearts of many. And we know it was Brian's first kind of like foray into like working with LSS, and Brian made jokes. What if we had a set with all Arachnes, and boom, the Hunted comes out, and we have these Agents of Chaos. But before we get to more Arachne talk, the idea here is the Hunted, right? Emperor gets killed, and people are not happy about it. They want to find who killed the Emperor. So here comes Fang and Syndra. Who are they?
Well, at this point in time that we're recording this, the individual hero pages have not come out.
Mm-hmm.
But from what the lore's told us, so I'll start with Fang. So Fang, obviously being a draconic warrior,
royal draconic warrior.
Royal, yes. I keep forgetting that they are royal. It is relevant.
Yeah.
So he is the captain of like some armed forces. I'm not sure if it's all the armed forces that they call this, but they're called the Children of the Dragon.
Sick name.
So he's like a real kind of hard ass captain, very loyal, devoted to the Emperor. And then Syndra, obviously also very loyal. She is the commander of a group called the Sayashi. I'm gonna double check I got that right. Sayashi, yes. And they're like a special force ninja group that's tasked with kind of doing more like Black Ops type of stuff. And obviously, being in charge of retribution for, the Emperor's death. So both of these very loyal, devoted people to the Emperor for their own reasons. We did kind of get little glimpses of why. I believe Syndra may have been some sort of student of some sort to the Emperor. And Fang, I think he might have had family killed, and then he was kind of brought into the armed forces and kind of given a new chance at life. So he kind of thanks a lot of that to the Emperor, hence why both of these individuals are pretty loyal to him. So and they definitely show that throughout this story. So that's kind of what we know about them so far.
Yeah, and this in game, this loyalty kind of comes within through the mechanic of fealty tokens, right? Fealty is like, right, I'm pledging my fealty to the Emperor, yada yada yada. And it's interesting how they don't, like, Syndra only creates fealties, right? So doesn't really get a payoff on her card, right? Like when you hit a marked hero, create a fealty token, and then her thing is actually having more draconic chain links, much like Fi cared about that as well. Once per turn instant, return the 2 draconic daggers from your graveyard. This costs 1 less to activate. For each draconic chain link you control, costs 3. So nothing too crazy. Kind of reminds us of like the Phoenix Flame thing, but it's kind of interesting that Syndra, kind of gameplay wise, design wise, acts like can create fealty, is like obviously loyal, but acts on her own accord, almost. Like, listen, I can do my most powerful stuff without being like loyal, right? Like, I can create loyalty, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
be, the most loyal. But then, like, on the opposite end, you got Fang, who really just gets super paid off for creating, like, for having fealty tokens. If you control 3 or more fealty token, dagger attacks cost you 1 less to activate. We know his dagger costs 1, and then you're like, okay, we saw it in Prague that once you get the 3rd fealty, the Fang is like incredible. It feels like Florian and Verdance when they hit their 4 or 8 cards. So Fang is like the uber loyal. Like she's like, if you are loyal, we're going ham. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder if it plays out in that way in the story as well, because I like to look at these like hero designs and make that connection, because they always have that stuff in mind. So
yeah, the fact that you brought that up, like after you brought up their mechanics linking to kind of their personalities, that really does make sense, because Syndra being a commander, like her job is to kind of inspire loyalty in her subordinates. Hence why, she doesn't really care too much about having the fealty tokens herself, whereas Fang, being lower down the rank but still, fairly high up, being a captain, he really gets that, power of his from being loyal to the Emperor. So it definitely does play out like that in the story.
Yeah, it is interesting. Now, there is a power dynamic there, right? You mentioned Syndra's a commander and Fang's a captain, and even in the most recent story, I think it was the Agents of, or the Children of Chaos. Children of Chaos, which I do recommend people go check out. There is a moment there where, they show up at this place. We'll talk about it in a minute, but they show up in this place, and, Fang is still going, like, being like all proper, right? Like, and like, as military as you'd expect a Royal Draconic Warrior to be like, yes, Commander. Yeah. And Syndra's like, you don't have to call, it's just us now. You don't have to call me Commander. So what's the power dynamic there? And do we know how they kind of know each other outside of just kind of like being coworkers in a way?
At this time, we don't really know. I'd be interested to see what kind of relationship they have, because the last time we were in Volcor, we had a very interesting relationship between 2 heroes, which was Dromai and Fire being like adopted siblings with one another, and how that came into play. But this almost makes it seem like they knew each other beforehand. Maybe they trained together and they were friends. And then now that there's this like power structure that they have to follow, like, I could definitely see Fang being the type to stick to the rules and not break them. Hence why he's, still trying to call Syndra Commander during these moments where he doesn't have to, because she's given him permission to, not have to do that. So I would assume that they definitely, at the very least, probably trained together and were like friendly with one another. That definitely makes sense. But yeah, that's also interesting because, I mean, you can even see it in real life. If you have a friend that's more well off than you in like a career or something, sometimes that can cause a lot of friction within your relationship with your friend. And, especially in the world of Flesh and Blood, when it's life and death, that's very interesting kind of personal, like interpersonal conflicts that they can explore in the stories. So I'm very keen to see what their relationship with one another is, because I would assume they definitely know each other beforehand.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see how this plays out, because like you said, this is a totally different vibe than the last time we were here, right? With Fi and Dromai, where, I mean, it was anger, right? Like the common theme there was anger, and this is more duty, if that makes sense. Like, a sense of purpose and like an idea of like being loyal and executing that loyalty and just hunting, right? Now, one question I do have is specifically, we've seen this character show up on multiple art in the set, but Long Whisker Loyalty, right? We have this fella who's kind of sitting on the throne. Is this like the stand-in emperor after the emperor's been killed? Because obviously people are pledging loyalty to this Long Whisker fella. Which is, also, I like the name. It's pretty funny. But, shows up on Long Whisker Loyalty, Rake Over the Coals, and a couple more places too. So, did we see anything about this character yet? Or is this just kind of setting up for a little bit bigger of a lore piece?
So I believe this character is called Tetsuo, if Rake Over the Coals is correct. I believe we actually see his name somewhere in the new lore. Tetsuo. Let me look this up. So he was in the story Cleanse the Corruption. And whereabouts? So it appears he is a interrogator of some sort. Probably an adjudicator, very similar to Typanis, I would imagine. Which, little spoiler alert for what we're going to talk about. Typanis shows up in this story, and he is a badass. I'm glad we got to see some of him. I love seeing these promo heroes that people kind of exclude from the canon for whatever reason. And sometimes you kind of have to if it's like Squizzy and Flu for like Rudy or something. But seeing that these other side characters are still kind of incorporated into the story is really cool. I would say the character in Long Whisker Loyalty, if it's not Tetsuo, it looks to me like a Lord Wizard, one of the higher ups, is probably ruling over some section of the kingdom of Volcor, and it's probably like showing loyalty to them, and then they themselves are loyal to like the emperor themselves. They're kind of like subordinates. That's what I'd imagine it would be, but I'll have a look at the art again.
He shows up on Oath of Loyalty as well. That majestic draconic action. I mean, just a really like imposing character, like from an art wise, and we do know they like to tell a lot of the story through the art. So, when I saw Long Whisker Loyalty and then Oath of Loyalty, I was like, okay, this is an important character. Not sure why, but might only be kind of because you see the scrolls, like it might be the adjudicator thing as well. This person who's kind of sending out these hunters really to find the assassin. So it could just be that.
Yeah, just having a look at it. So Oath of Loyalty, that I believe depicts Typanis.
Oh, okay.
Because in the story, when they're talking about Typanis helping with like a particular siege, it does show that artwork. So I'd assume that's Typanis. And I'm also keeping an eye on his shoulder pads, his like little pauldrons, because there are like little dragons that kind of come off it, little ornaments, whereas compared to Long Whisker Loyalty, he doesn't have those. So I'm assuming that's probably a garb that's just given to like people like Typanis, like the Lord Wizards. And yeah, who we're seeing in Long Whisker Loyalty is probably just one of the Lord Wizards receiving some sort of scroll of some sort. But I love the style of those characters. Those characters look so cool.
Yeah. I mean, this might be another Judge
really
promo
unique.
or something like that sooner.
Yeah, for sure.
So we can get a little bit more information there. Now, that does kind of bring us to the Agents of Chaos, right? So, like, this is the biggest curveball, I would say, that LSS has thrown us with this set. We knew that Chaos was going to be a talent, but we didn't get a lot of Chaos cards.
Nope.
No. I mean, we got Brody's card. Now, in defense of that, I know some people were a little bit bummed, and like I was too, but like designing cards for especially a limited set that is like completely RNG, like weird, like dual-sided randomness, it could be not fun. So I understand why they took a break from that, but it might be a cool like thing to see them add in the future. But we do know that Arachne, golly, what's Arachne's new name? Arachne Marionette and Web of Deceit is a chaos assassin and has these demi-heroes, these like masks that Arachne can put on, right? Become an agent of chaos. And this is a depiction of Arachne that is not like we've seen. It feels more otherworldly, demonic. What are we looking at here? Because this is a lot wilder than I think what we are used to in this
Yes.
game.
Well, we haven't really gotten hard confirmation for it, but I've got particular theories about what I think the whole Arachne thing is. So, if you look at the artwork for Marionette, you can see that their right shoulder is exploding with chaotic energy of some sort. I'm going to refer to that sort of material and energy and flair that you'll see on a lot of artwork as just chaos itself. It seems almost a bit like a plague, like black ichor. So just seeing that it's on the right shoulder, and we've known historically that the Arachne that we've always known has always had this weird lump under their robes on that very same shoulder. And you can see with Arachne's solitary confinement that this lump was some sort of strange plague that was going on. So what I think we're seeing in Arachne Marionette is the fact that what Arachne's bump was some sort of experiment that Dr. Cress Mortimer, who was the person that found Arachne and experimented on them, so it was the result of some sort of experiment that they did, and it's got some sort of tie-in with Chaos as a talent, which is tied to the Aesir of Chaos, the Raven, which we don't know too much about. And this is kind of the final form of whatever the experiment was. This chaos that was building up inside of this lump has exploded, and now we've got this crazy new form of Arachne that's just wild and can do all these crazy powers that we read about within the lore. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not Arachne is shape-shifting when we transform into these demi-heroes. I'm kind of the mind that Arachne isn't one person. Arachne is a name given to a bunch of different assassins, and then kind of that assassin's actual name is the type of spider that it represents. So the Arachne that we've always seen is the Huntsman, but now we've got all these others that are like Black Widow, Funnelweb, but they've all got the title of Arachne. So I think Arachne is just more like, Arachne is kind of a play on words for the word arachnid, which just means spider. So I think it's a way of kind of like erasing whatever name the assassin had before they kind of became a part of the spider, and just, all right, you are all Arachne now. And to designate each of you as different from one another, we're going to give you these code names based on the spiders. So that's how we get the Black Widow and the Tarantula and the Trapdoor, that sort of thing. So, yeah, that's kind of my overall take on probably what's going on with Arachne, but I could definitely see people saying stuff like, oh, Arachne now has the ability to change, forms and stuff. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting when you say Arachne is these many different assassins, because I look at like Arachne Marionette, right? We know what Marionette deals with, puppets, right? And maybe Arachne Marionette is, in a way, the Arachne, right? And the different puppets that this Arachne has also goes by the name Arachne. Then you see Black Widow, Funnelweb, Orb Weaver, yada yada yada, and that's why this hero is able to turn into these agents of chaos and kind of like, you even see like the mask kind of like slipping out of the back of Marionette in a way. So it's very interesting to me because this feels like Fang and Syndra didn't know what they were getting into.
They definitely didn't.
They definitely. And I think that it's there's a lot of confirmation to be had, but like the idea of Arachne has always been very mysterious, and now we have this kind of demi-hero, chaos assassin, like agents of chaos. Like the idea is you can't catch Arachne because Arachne is everywhere. We are Arachne, and you are screwed, right? And in the most recent lore article, we kind of get not this climax of the story, but we see Fang and Syndra enter this tower, right? Where you mentioned Lord Wizard Chio.
Yes, Chio. I would assume, but who knows?
They mentioned that character, and I'm like, wait a second, this sounds pretty important. And I was like, I can't wait to ask Kale about this. What's going on in this story?
Okay, so to kind of summarize what this new sort of lore story is, it's actually said in the story as well that this is a few years after the Emperor has died.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't the immediate aftermath. But I would actually like to know like what kind of happened with, who's running Volcor now that it's been a couple years after the death. But anyway, Fang tries to hunt down some people that he thinks might be responsible or might be linked to the people that killed the Emperor. And he ends up running into this group called the Dust Runners, which that name might be familiar because we see a card called Dust Runner Outlaw, which kind of depicts one of these people. And from what I understand, they're just kind of outlaws trading illegal goods, that sort of thing. But he has this big scuffle with them, doesn't manage to catch the guy, and he gets injured in the process. So he goes back to command, tells everyone what's up, and that he has marked this individual, but unfortunately wasn't able to get them. Syndra catches wind of this and was like, all right, we're going to track this person down. So they end up tracking this person down, Syndra does, kills them, and then uses their body as like a makeshift flag post when they go to this merchant called Savai, I believe his name was. They go up to his front gates of his little fort that he has, and they're like, so we know that you're in cahoots with this guy that we've just killed. You're going to tell us everything you know. And there ends up being this big battle. Lots of cool stuff happens. Taipanis, I mean, we know now that he's a Lord Wizard, but we've always seen him as an adjudicator. And we thought, okay, he doesn't, cast magic. But no, he casts magic, and he casts big magic. So, Taipanis is there balling out, blowing people up. Fang infiltrates with a bunch of warriors and whatnot. Syndra gets in, and they end up finding this merchant. But then they find there's these like weird assassins with them, and there's this big scuffle. Ends up killing a bunch, and then they manage to capture one of these people that was kind of in cahoots with this merchant lord, and they interrogate them and find out that the person that's been sending money to the people that have been, doing shady stuff and might be behind the assassination of the Emperor, one of them is Lord Wizard Chio. So Lord Wizard Chio is actually in Kano's backstory. And for those that don't remember Kano's backstory, there was some disturbance in Aether that was going on, and one of the higher-ups of Kano ends up like attacking him, and he has to kill him in self-defense. So he gets taken to this court trial, basically. And during it, some stuff goes down where some people turn into like kind of zombies, and like half of them kind of turn on each other. And then when some of them are killed, this weird black goo comes out, which they end up incinerating to stop it. And they determine that's probably the cause of what's been going on with all these people acting weird. And Lady Chio was kind of in that room as that happened. So Syndra's like, okay, you've just named a higher up of the court. Like, how do I know you're not pulling my leg? But they decide to kind of follow this lead anyway. And Syndra and Fang get a bunch of people and they set out to the south of Volcor, and they're going to go to Lady Chio's like fort, basically citadel. On the way, they start encountering weird things going on in the land of Volcor. There's strange growths that have come out of the ground that are like strange crystal structures. There's like all these movements in the shadows that they just don't know what's going on. They try and look, but whatever they see has disappeared by the time they look. They end up making their way to like an abandoned farmhouse, and while they're there, there's like weird people skulking around in the forest. One of them was like a young person, like maybe around 15, that Syndra ends up killing. And they end up melting into like the same goo that they've been noticing all this time. And then there's this old lady that she can't kill because when she goes to throw daggers at her, the trees literally protect the old woman. So they're like, okay, what's going on? They start freaking out. They move on from there. They go to a village. People in the village start looking at them weird. The people are like walking around with disjointed limbs, and they're seeing horses that are like melded with their riders, and all this like weird body horror stuff, almost like Junji Ito going on, you know? And they start getting attacked as they're trying to make their way to the citadel. And by the time they get to the citadel, it's only Syndra and Fang left. The rest of their crew has all died. Their horses have died. And like partway through this, there's been like glimpses that they've seen of these arachnes that we now know. Like I think Tarantula might have been one that jumped out and killed their lieutenant. I think it might have been Tarantula.
Is that in the art actually, or no? You just see the most terrifying art ever of arachne.
Yeah, that's when they stayed at the village where all the weird people were. They killed everyone there, and they stayed in the village, and they set up sentries outside. And then they woke up partway through the night, and all their sentries are dead, and the gates are wide open. And they're like, if they've killed our sentries while we're sleeping, why didn't they kill us at the same time? And then they realized they're being toyed with, and a lot of their sentries are just strung up around the fort with like their eyes gouged out, and you know, they're hanging upside down, that sort of thing. And that's where you see the art for, I think that card's called Tarantula Bite or Tarantula Fangs, maybe
just bite.
Something along those lines.
Tarantula Toxin. Yeah.
Tarantula Toxin, yeah, where the guy's hanging upside down, but the artwork's flipped.
Yeah.
That's such cool art. So they make it to Lord Wizard Chio's citadel, and everything is just corrupted, basically. There's weird spires of all this chaotic material of some sort. You know, they feel like they're being constantly watched. There's like whispers that they keep hearing, kind of penetrating their mind. Weird symbols written everywhere. And eventually when they get to the room where Lord Wizard Chio should be, they find her like dismembered and turned into almost like an art piece on top of a pile of all of her dead servants and guards. And attached to this dead pile is this arachne form of some sort, which is connected to the pile with these strange tendrils. And Syndra and Fang end up beginning to fight them, and before long, the story kind of climaxes, and we're left on a bit of a cliffhanger where every single arachne demi-hero that we've seen from this set kind of comes out of the shadows. So it's a really weird cliffhanger, because we're not sure what to make of it. We're not sure, like, is this part of like the chaos illusion that's been going on? Are they really all separate people? Are they the same? And I kind of want to touch on just quickly the point you made about the like original arachne that we see. The new hero card is called Marionette.
Mm-hmm.
There's an important card that isn't in this set that I think is worthwhile mentioning for this lore. In the Arachne Blitz deck for the Hunted, there is a Mentor card.
Oh.
And
know if I
the
saw that.
Mentor is a Arachne Mentor, and it's called the Hand That Pulls the Strings.
Oh, yeah.
So, while I could definitely see like the Arachne Marionette being the one to puppet all of these other demi-hero Arachnes, at the very least, I think Arachne themselves might be being manipulated by this strange person. By the way, that's a really sick Mentor card. I think it's actually playable, which is a first for Mentors. But yeah, there's some really cool artwork. I don't know if you
Oh yeah,
are
I'm
able
trying
to look at it.
to see if I can find where the
I think if you just type in Mentor into February.
Oh, February, yeah. It's a great resource, that February, I would say.
Yep, February. Shout out to February.
Mentor.
I'm a patron. Proud patron.
As am I. As am I. Oh, yeah. A hand that pulls the strings. A weird looking, bug looking guy. Once per turn, attack reaction 0. Turn this face up. Activate this only while it's face down your arsenal. Classic Mentor. While this is face up in your arsenal, your first attack with contract each turn gets go again. If it's attacking a royal hero, it gets +1. At the beginning of your end phase, destroy a silver you control. If you don't, put this on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. And it blocks for 4.
And it blocks for 4.
Yeah, that card's awesome.
Which is crazy. Yeah. So this character on this card, I'll describe it for those that are listening. Think Arachne mask, but with like really 2 long horns. And instead of wearing kind of rags, it's more like robes, almost like Solana's Scholar.
Yeah.
But this character has 6 arms, I believe 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 arms, and he's holding. Well, I don't know who they are holding like a bunch of scrolls. I'm assuming contracts. So to me, that almost looks like maybe the leader of the Spider. I could be wrong, because they are taking in all these contracts. At the very least, they're their accountant.
Yeah.
So, I feel like just with the title of that character, the hand that pulls the strings, if Arachne is the marionette, this is the puppet master. That's my theory, but I could definitely see Arachne themselves having control over the demi-heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had seen this, and like I felt like we saw it a while ago, and I completely forgot about it. Yeah, that's
before
so
spoiler
sick.
season.
Yeah, and notably, assuming this character has 2 legs, it is 8 limbs like a spider, so 6 arms and 2 legs, which is like I'm like, oh man, they should have 8, and then I'm like, oh no, they do.
And there are 6 demi-heroes, so 1 arm for each as well.
How about that? Now, I do want to say to kind of, also put it on a cliffhanger for us. I do love this last line of the Children of Chaos lore article here. You kind of get to this kind of cliffhanger where they're about to fight these Arachnes. And, you get this last line that says, they turn to meet their fate. The children of the children of the dragon facing the Children of Chaos within this twisted apocalypse at the end of the world, which, we're seeing a lot of apocalyptic events here happen in Wraith, right? With the War of the Monarchs, and now this, where this feels like chaos has come to kind of really destroy Volcor, right? Where, this is draconic versus chaos, light versus shadow, Teklo's tanks or whatever. I don't know. It is, we're starting to see a lot of this kind of conflict bubble a lot more in Wraith. So, it's clear to me, and I'm going to ask you, but it looks to me like they are setting up for the next couple years of sets and stories to tell. And, it's exciting to me. What do you expect to be next here for Volcor?
I think we're going to learn a lot more about L'Apocalypta which, for those who don't know, they are a cult in the pits that worships the Aesir of Chaos, the Raven. And their whole thing is they believe that it's inevitable that the Aesir will return to Wraith, and that will be a net negative generally for humanity. So to prepare humanity for the chaos that is the Aesir arriving, they're going to cause chaos themselves to kind of temper humanity against what's coming. If you're going to climb Mount Everest, you're going to climb a smaller mountain first, I would assume. So that's kind of their vibe. So I could see like more tie-in in like a future set between the pits and Volcor, because we did kind of have that a little bit between Dynasty and Outsiders. So I could see that, and I mean, plus a lot of people love the pits anyway. I think we should go back there.
Agreed.
But yeah, yeah, I'm not quite sure, and also we still have to figure out what exactly has gone on with the rebellion that at this point in time happened a couple years ago with Fi and Dromai. Like, did Dromai take over the throne? Did they just put like a relative of the Emperor on the throne, because he does have relatives? I know a relative of his actually talked to Kano in Kano's story. I believe they're the one that told him that he was going to become the Drakai of Aether. So there's definitely blood relatives of the Emperor that could take the throne. You could have someone like Dromai or Fi take the throne. I really want to know what's going on with that. And then also Icelander came to Volcor during all of this. And like what's going on with that? I mean, she found out who she was to an extent, but that's kind of where we left off with that. And then also with this whole rebellion thing happening, Shiana had traveled there from Solana and then taken news of that back to the Grand Magisters, and the Grand Magisters are like, oh yeah, we know that he died. And then she's like, what? And then they mind controlled her or something, and now she's like, yes, praise Sol. So there's like lots of tie-ins between the War of the Monarchs and all this Volcor stuff. I'm just really curious to see where they go with it next, because I have like very little idea what they're going to do with, at the very least, this particular part of the Volcor story. I think we'll probably get a bit more lore about the rebellion and what happened with that, probably when we get a new Dromai, because I feel like we're getting a new Dromai probably in an armory deck.
Yeah, well, so, I thought it would be the next one. Then it was Aurora, because a lot of the mechanics in this set like also like help against like allies and stuff like that. So it was a little surprising, but maybe the next one. After that.
And then of course we also had that like random one-off. Well, it wasn't really random because we got the new Ira Scarlet Revenger hero card, but that had some tie-ins to Dromai stuff too, because Ira was in one of the like caverns that we see on like it was the chromatic caverns, was it? I'm trying to remember which one it was. But we're getting all these like dust cards as well for Dromai. So it's like she must be around the corner. Like these dusts have to be more than just thematic, because obviously each set where we go to a new place, we're getting a dust for that place. Like Rosetta, we got dust from Aria. Part the Misveil, we got a dust from Mysteria, that sort of thing. So maybe once we get all 8 dusts from all regions, maybe then we'll finally be able to assemble all the pieces of Dromai, the Forbidden One.
Yeah. I mean, well, we gotta go to Savage Lands.
Yep, we do.
But it's it'll be really interesting, because that is certainly the biggest question mark here. But the set's looking very cool. I'm liking the story. It's exciting. I'm like a big fan of Fang, and he's
pretty sick.
Yeah, just kind of like this, just a captain that's just like is really I think really powerful, and I think I want to see how that plays out. Now, we do have listener questions before we say goodbye, because you have to rest up for your League That Means Nothing match. First comes, a couple come from Capolo. First of all, Bolo says, congratulations on 5 years of content. And then asks,
Cap.
why is there only one rune chant? All the arts had the same symbol. Will we have more chants in the future?
I really don't know why we only have one. I mean, when we got different artwork for them from Rosetta, I honestly thought they were going to be different, but they were all the same. So, it might just be that the particular incantation to get the arcane to sort of spill forth like a rune chant, it's just the same all the time. And that if you change the incantation, you get something different. So, I mean, maybe in the future we might get like a super vamped up rune chant that does like 2 or 3 arcane damage, and that might have different sort of incantation glyphs. I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of like Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, teleportation circles in that game. They're all written differently to specifically, you know, point to a certain location, or if you do a different spell, it might be a fire type spell or something, but your incantations are different because it's a different form of it. So I think just in general, like what a rune chant attack is when it like breaks and deals arcane damage, that is always the same. So the incantation is probably always going to be the same. That's my guess. But
yeah, makes the most sense. Capolo also asks, X marks the spot. Is this set just a hint about the pirate set in the Seas of Wraith?
Oh, we are getting a pirate set. We have to at this point. There's no doubt about it. Like the community, I would probably point to DM Armada as being the progenitor of all this, the pirate set. Like the community has for years been wanting a pirate set, and then we've gotten hints to it with like Trench of Sunken Treasures. Is that what it's called? The Trench?
I just call it Trench.
Trench, yep. For sure. We've gotten, you know, Barbed Undertow, like all these like nautical type theme things with Riptide. We got Cut Through the Facade in Rosetta, which had a pirate killing a necromancer. Which is pretty wild.
Evil spirit, yeah.
Yep. And then now X marks the spot, and the female character in that
from the Storm.
Yeah, Shelter from the Storm as well. Like the female character in, I think it's Shelter from the Storm.
Yeah.
There's like a red-haired girl there. Looks very similar to DM Armada's original pirate character that he's made for his channel. So it's like, you know, I would be so surprised if like we didn't get a pirate set at all. And like, it's a cool concept because it's also a set that wouldn't necessarily have to be tied to a specific region of Wraith.
Mm-hmm.
It could be all of the sea. It could be exploring islands that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
You know, with different things on it. So I definitely think we're going to get a set like that. I don't think we're going to get a pirate class because I would struggle to think about how that would be mechanically unique from other classes. But I could definitely see a pirate hero that is maybe a warrior or a ranger or something else.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine like it as a talent of some sorts, you know.
Could be talent, yeah.
Yeah, you know, seafarer or something like that. Although, you know, it's not really magical in a way, so it's like it would be closer to mechanologist, like where it's the class and the talent is the same thing. But, you know, very exciting. I mean, next set, it's the summer of the Northern Hemisphere, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, I don't know, like, that would be cool. And then I guess the Pro Tour is going to be the APAC region. So, you know, lots of ocean down there, as
certainly is.
They call it Oceania. Some do. So, you know, hey, listen, we'll hold on, you know, it will happen. I'm hoping. And then Kabul also asked, what would you do to spice up the story of Flesh and Blood?
I mean, the obvious answer is just to kill a hero, but that would annoy a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, imagine if LSS was just like, oh yeah, Florian, yeah, he's dead now.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what? Like, my favorite hero. I feel like in a way they've kind of written themselves into a corner where it's very difficult to kill off a character unless you do it immediately, like what they did with the Emperor.
Yeah.
Because then people know, hey, if I'm getting into this character, I'm investing in this character, I'm buying specializations for this character. Like they would know immediately, oh, there's only ever probably going to be one version of them because they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I guess outside of that, I really, in a way, like as much as I really love the Hunted lore and like a lot of the other lore stories, I feel like they're taking a little bit of like a superhero type approach to the way that characters go about doing things in their story. Like I was reading this and I was like, a lot of the things they're saying are a little bit one-liner-ish,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like a lot of the way that they're going about doing battles is kind of like very superhero-esque, where a little bit cliche. So I'd really like for them to focus more on like the nitty-gritty, down to earth. I want to see the characters struggle. And like whenever they're fighting like someone, I want them to actually like describe them parrying attacks, and maybe they don't kill this random grunt immediately in one swipe of a sword or one dagger throw. You know, it takes them a couple tries because the person's blocking, or you know, maybe some random grunt gets the better of them and all of a sudden they're on the ground and they're on top of them trying to stop them from stabbing them, you know. Because at the moment they seem a little bit invincible, and like the only people that can really hurt them are other heroes, which makes sense for a hero-centric game. But you know, I'd like a bit more struggle. It makes the fights more exciting. Like I feel like the Uzuri fight that we got in her story was really cool because it was like, you know, there was struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what I'd focus on.
Yeah, even I mean, you know, all the outsider stuff was really cool, and like, you know, the Riptide's like tidbit, you felt like you were also like lurking around in like the gross water after you set a couple traps, and then like you kind of like give like the hey to Azuri, like I got it, like don't worry about it. Like it puts you in the shoes of the character a little bit more. You know, I definitely got the one-liner vibes from this story. Like lore-wise, it was really cool, but yeah, the characterization was a little Marvel MCU. You know, like,
Yeah.
like, you know, which is a lot of people like it. Not my cup of tea necessarily, but next question comes from Darth Prentice, aka Greg. Where do you think we're heading next in Wraith? And how long until we head to a not in mainland Wraith region, which I guess we were talking about pirates, so probably whenever we do that.
Yeah. See, I would have said maybe we're getting a pirate set as like the last set for this year. But the fact that like Pro Tour and stuff is happening in APAC, is that around mid this year? Is that when it's happening?
July, I think. I mean, like
July?
Amsterdam was July, so
that kind of points to me as maybe the if we're having a pirate set this year, it might be the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really I'm kind of concerned at this point that they haven't done a Savage Land set.
It's getting a little crazy.
we've returned to some regions multiple times before we've had a Savage Land set. Like that's the last one that you got to do to kind of complete the you know, the kind of collection there, where there's at least one set based in each region. Like we've gone back to Volcor, we've gone back to like Solana and the Monastery, we've gone back to Aria. Yeah, it's kind of Savage Lands time.
I would say.
So I think you've convinced me that the next set will be pirate or like nautical themed on the seas, and then the set after that, at the end of the year, I think would be Savage Lands
for Worlds. Which makes sense. I think World's going to be US. We're a bunch of savages over here, so you know, what can you do? Next question comes from Turtle Matern, who asked, after 5 years, what's been the biggest overall improvement with Fab's lore to the sets, and what's the biggest growth area for them with lore moving forward?
Biggest improvement, I really think it's, I mean, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but they've just produced more of it. You know, not always have they produced more, but they produced more. And I mean, we've gotten a lot of really good short stories within, like, for example, with the Hunted, we got 4 stories within the span of 4 days, and like they were all decently sized, and they're paying a lot more attention to continuity and, you know, fixing errors that they made, and to an extent retconning a few things. Like, for example, there's just like little bits I notice where, like, the Nebula Blade, the lore for that, one of the people that held the blade was called Vera Sutcliffe. And then if you look at the flavor text for Fate Foreseen, it's a quote from someone called Vera. So there are now 2 people canonically within the world that I'm certain are separate, called Vera. And then for some lore I got for Sutcliffe's research notes, there was a character called Leona. And then if you look at the lore page for the Demonastery, it lists there being someone at the Demonastery called Leone. So now there's a Leona and a Leone, and I've clarified with LSS they are separate people. But now you've got this issue where they've kind of just been like, oh, we need to find a name for something. Here's a name, and then they've kind of reused it later. So I feel like that was just growing pains from early days of Fab lore, and they're really tightening that down. In terms of like the biggest growth area for them, I mean, again, produce more lore, but I guess as we were talking earlier, just really focusing on the on like characters struggling and making them more personable, which I think they did a really good job with for like Outsiders to an extent, but specifically probably Rosetta.
Yeah.
Like Florian and Verdance had real depth to their characters, where there was no person where you could just point and be like, that person is objectively right, this one's objectively wrong. There was this gray area, and that's what makes for interesting stories conflict. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like physical violence conflict, but like, you know, politics and arguments and debates with one another. So I think if they focus on that more for characters, the story quality would improve. But then again, I'm not a writer yet, so you know, they might know better than me. But that's just how I feel about the stories in general. So
hey, it's all subjective, right? So like, you
yes,
know, so
exactly.
like, you know, you're just talking about how you feel. We did get some late questions come in. One being from Pat Shaw, Fab semi-retired Pat Shaw. How do you currently feel about the game being played? How has the opinion changed over the last 5 years, and how do you feel LSS's commitment to lore matches up with your own expectations of them?
So how the game's being played. I feel like I need to look at this question so I can really.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's all good. How do you currently feel about the game being played? So I'm guessing that's talking about current meta.
Yeah, and I guess like how, like, you know, we've had. I'm interpreting it as like we've had certain bans, like the book banning was big, and you know they made a big adjustment there, and we're also still seeing some powerful stuff lingering from MST, you know, stuff that you go to, you know, you go play on Fabric or on Talishar, you go to Armory. Is it feeling good to you?
I would say so. I mean, there's always a concern, especially since I played since the early days. Like, I played when it was, you know, Welcome to Wraith. That's all you've got. You know, the most exciting thing you could do would be like, oh, I rolled high on my scab skins, or like I did this really sick attack reaction with Dorinthia or something, you know, or I did this massive hit with Bravo and, you know, dominated. So like it's hard sometimes looking back and just being like, the good old times where it was very simple. But I think like the game really does thrive when you have like deeper complex mechanics and game systems in place like we have now. But at the same time, that leads to situations where you get power creep, you get cards that warp the meta around them. Then you need bans. Bans never feel good. Well, I mean, yeah, they never do feel good because you're either losing a card that you enjoyed playing, or you need to scream out to LSS to be like, hey, I need this to happen, otherwise the game's garbage. So like everyone kind of feels bad in the end, you know. So yeah, I think especially with like some of the sets where they've said, hey, we're kind of slowing down a bit, like Bright Lights, that was a weaker set. They did amp it back up for like, you know, Part the Mistveil, but Rosetta was, I feel like, a really balanced set. And you know, I haven't seen too much of the Hunted, but that seems pretty balanced as well. So I think they're really taking the reins and steadily kind of steering the game in a good direction in terms of like, you know, gradual power creep, which, you know, you're always going to have power creep. That's how you sell new cards.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. It's how you deal with it that makes the game good. And then what was the other half of the question? I've already forgot at this point.
How do you feel
lore.
LSS's commitment to lore matches up with your own expectations of them?
I'm what you call a Vorthos player, I think is how you refer to them, which is all about like lore and aesthetic. So I feel like I'm always going to be expecting way more than what they feel like is important to deliver. Because, you know, realistically, Flesh and Blood is a game first and foremost, so they have to focus on the game part. Otherwise, it all kind of falls apart. But I feel like they are aware of, but maybe don't quite put as much importance into the lore and the thematics of the game as I would like, because especially with like a hero-based game, you see it with video games like, say, League of Legends or, you know, Apex Legends or, you know, whatever it is. People really love gravitating to one character and they're like, that's my character. I love that character. And sometimes that's enough to draw someone into playing the game in the first place. So I feel like if you present your characters very well and give ample lore, that's almost enough to tempt a lot of people to just get into the game. You know, the amount of times I've been like, oh, I kind of like playing, I might like trying this video game or this card game. And then I kind of look into the characters and I'm like, they're not really grabbing me. Even if the game system's good, I've immediately taken a step back and it's even harder for me to get into it now. And that's just kind of the player I am. So, you know, I think they're getting there. It's still growing pains. Like 5 years is a long time to us, but to a card game, that's a very short span of time. So, you know, they're still working on it, but I'd really like them to just focus maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more on lore. And really make sure they kind of, you know, run a little bit of a tighter ship when it comes to how much they produce, how often they produce it, and how they release it. Yeah, and maybe take a page out of other games, sort of books, and literally release books. You know, people have talked all the time about the old fat packs for Magic. You'd get a novel in it. Like that was how cool's that? Imagine if you get like those Blitz collections and it has like a little novella in it. Like that'd be wild.
Even like a little graphic novel. Like, you know, like
a
cool
comic,
way to get the art going.
Yeah. So that's probably what I'd say for that. So
cool. And then one last one from William from the Table Pit, who says, I love your channel. Big congrats on 5 years. And do you think there are more doors or windows on Wraith? Also, bigger congrats on turning 5. No, biggest congrats.
More doors or windows? Wow,
there's gotta be windows,
that's a
right?
tough one. There are a lot of windows, especially if you look at like the towers in Solana. Like they're just covered in windows, right?
Yeah.
And then like metrics, they have skyscrapers. So like if you're counting each pane as an individual window, like I'd gotta say windows is more, right? Like what would have more doors? Because I mean they don't really have that many vehicles, so you couldn't say like a door on a car.
Yeah.
You know, I'd probably have to say windows. If anyone has a compelling argument for doors, I'd love to hear it.
There can't be. I'm anti-door. You know, it's all windows. I'm telling you, it's all windows. But thank you for submitting those questions. Those can be submitted on the Buds Discord, free to join in the show notes below. That's going to do for the show. Another lore episode in the books. A good one, I'd say, as they always are. Kale, thank you again so much. And please plug everything you like to plug.
Yeah, if you've gotten this far into the episode, you probably already know DeadSummerArt everywhere. Yep, I'm mostly chatting on Blue Sky instead of X nowadays, probably for obvious reasons. Blue Sky is just way better. But yeah, big shout out to Blue Sky community and everyone that jumped over there. That's where I'll, write my thoughts and stuff now, but I still post important stuff on my X if you still want to follow that. YouTube, bunch of new stuff coming, big projects. I'm going to try get my big project I've had in the works for a while now actually out this year. I'm actually going to, dedicate a lot of time to it. I'm going to try get old Jimmy Blanco, James White. I'm going to try get an interview with him. I don't know if he will do it, but I mean,
Listen,
he has been a fan of my channel before, so.
Well, put in a good word for me. I've asked like 20 times.
He's a hard man to reach.
Yeah, that's for sure. Please do check out Kale's stuff, and looking forward to seeing, the future of the channel, and talking about pirates next time, probably, hopefully. Or the
Yep.
I'll take the Savage Lands, man.
Yeah,
I'll
I'd
take 'em.
take either.
Yeah. But you can continue to find me on mostly Blue Sky, but I do have the Twitter thing going still for the same reason. If I need to post something that needs to be blasted, or I need to tag somebody that doesn't have a Blue Sky, which, come on, get on it. I post on over there. The Buds Discord, check that out. YouTube, give the old like, comment, subscribe. And my other podcast I do with my cousin, Fresh Juice, Indie Games. We talk about those over there. And finally, a little bit of food. Always like to talk about food. Do you have any food you had lined up? Because I know
do.
you're not adventurous, but you do like, I feel like every time the episode's coming up, you're like, all right, I better eat something different.
I better eat something different to normal. Yeah, I actually do. And I mean, I did talk to you about this before we started, and I don't want to down the episode, but I haven't obviously said this to anyone else in the community yet, but the past week I had my nan pass away suddenly, which was very sad. Still processing that at the moment. But an upside to that was she has a recipe that I love to bits, and I made it on this past weekend as sort of a tribute to her. I'd been meaning to make them anyway, and I promised I was going to make some and take them to her, but never got to do that, unfortunately. But made them anyway, had a little, candlelit vigil for her, and had her veggie sausage rolls.
Ooh.
So normally sausage rolls are made with like mince inside, wrapped with puff pastry. But her particular one doesn't use any meat, and it's not as if I'm a vegetarian. It just tastes good. So it uses like zucchini, carrot, cheese, oats, surprisingly.
Oh.
Like sweet chili sauce,
wow.
like crack an egg in there. Oh, it's so good, and you can dip it in like, you guys would call it ketchup, we call it tomato sauce. I dip mine in tomato sauce, but you can dip it in sweet chili sauce or barbecue or whatever else you got. And yeah, it was really good, very filling, very warming, and made me think of my nan, which was the most important thing. So I was like, yeah, that's probably something good to talk about at the very end. If anyone wants the recipe, I can give it to you.
Oh,
it's not a
yeah.
secret.
Yeah, drop the recipe.
Yeah, I did take some photos, so I might have to put it in the food pics.
Oh yeah,
on your Discord.
Well,
Another reason to join Discord.
Listen, hey, shout out to Nan. Onto a better place. We love you, buddy. Cooking and food is a great way to connect with your family and everybody.
Indeed.
And I think that's awesome. So, all that being said, we still don't have time for Charmer, so we'll have to get to him next time. Please stay fresh. And Pirates next.